When you're building your membership site, one of the things you're inevitably going to ask is, should you build a member community into it, such as forums and groups and things like that? And if you are going to build it, what platform do you use? So I've got some experience with this, not only for myself, but on behalf of some clients, and I want to talk about that question now. In my career with membership sites, I've kind of run the gamut on the different options out there, not only with different software, but also whether to even have one or not. For a while, I thought I wanted a community in my membership, and I did build one. In fact, I built one several years ago. I started off with a Facebook group, which is nice and easy, and then I got it out of Facebook and switched over to Discourse, which is an independent forum software, and then I brought it in-house with BuddyBoss, and then I switched to BBPress, which is just a free open source WordPress plugin that does a forum. And then I said, I don't want one anymore. And so as of now, I actually don't have any community functionality on my membership at all. So with that being said, I want to first talk about pros and cons, like do you want to bother with a membership site? What are the arguments for and against it? And then I want to talk about what the different software options are that you might want to consider if you do decide to go forward. I've found that too many people end up knee-jerking into the idea of having a community. It's almost like they think that if they build a membership site, they must build a community into it. And of course, the attraction is obvious with regard to having a community. I mean, you've got user-generated content, which is always great. It's, great content that can be anyway, good content that you don't have to create. And so therefore, you have this idea that your members can kind of help each other and you don't have to be in there and creating every little thing. And so that's attractive. And then the other thing is that it can increase your retention rate so that people stick around and they keep paying on a monthly basis. At least this is the idea with regard to having a membership with a community attached. And so a lot of people end up going into it right from the get-go and then find that it's a lot harder than they thought. So with that in mind, I want to talk about the pros and cons of having a community and whether you might want to consider doing it, or maybe you want to be like, let's put this off until later. The pros of having a community are sort of obvious. There's that old saying that people will join for the content, but they will stay for the community. And, if you can really get that community going, that saying is true. People will stick around longer if they feel like they've got a real bond with the community that you build inside your membership site. There's also some, benefits that go along with having that membership, because it can keep people logging back in over and over again, it keeps them coming back. It gives you a place to host events and various community functions that you might want to build into your membership. You can, depending on what platform you use, you can even do live videos right into the community. You can do masterminds where you can kind of put your members together and let them do things, have them flock together based on various sub-interests. You get the idea. There's a lot of cool things you can do with a membership site. And again, if it works out real well for you, it can increase your stick rate and your retention rate moving forward. But then there's the flip side of this, and that is that in most cases, building up a community and getting that engagement going is a lot harder than you probably think it is. When you're coming into this and you're starting from zero, it's really much more difficult than you think to get that engagement up. It really is. It takes a lot more time than you think. And so what happens is if you have a community that just is kind of like a ghost town, it can actually make your membership site look less valuable than if you were to have no community at all, because people are going to have that instant judgment where they see a community that just barely has any activity and they're like, well, what's up with that? That's what's going to happen. Okay. So, keep in mind, building up a community, especially from zero, if you didn't come into it with a built-in email list and a built-in following, it's going to be difficult. And even once people have joined, it's a lot of work to keep them coming back and engaging with that community. And it really takes some inertia. And then even once you've got the inertia, it can be a full-time job, quite literally, to manage that community. There are many companies out there that hire community managers, and this is all they do, is they manage that business's community. So it can be a pretty time-consuming thing to do. Now, with all that being said, you need to ask yourself, what are your real business goals. Like, what is the intention here? What do you want your life as an entrepreneur to look like? If you don't have the means or the size in your business to hire a community manager, and you're just doing this as a solopreneur, then you go like, do you want to spend the time building up that community? How core is that community to your offer? How important is that community functionality and that user generated content is to the offer that you're making to people? In a lot of cases, and this was certainly the case with me, I found that it wasn't worth my time. It simply wasn't worth my time. When I look at what my business does, having the community was a sideshow. It really was not that important. And so at the end of the day, I decided to get rid of it. I didn't want that extra appendage out there of something that I had to check to make sure people were getting answers and it didn't look like I was ignoring them and all that. And I just like, well, I don't need that. If they have a question, they can shoot me an email. And so that's what I elected to do. And so that's my personal opinion on whether you should have a community or not. Like, if you're going to go into it, you need to go in with your eyes wide open about what it will truly entail to build that thing up. If you come into it with an existing audience of some size, then you might be at an advantage and be able to build that community up a lot faster. But if you don't, then it's going to be a much more uphill battle than you probably think it's going to be. And for that reason, I would probably look at making a membership site offer to your people that does not make the community a core function. If anything, make it like a bonus, something like that, and then we'll talk about your various options that might fit that moving forward. So if you decide to move forward with building a community into your membership site, we need to look at the options out there, okay? Now, obviously, I've been involved with building a lot of different membership sites with a lot of different ways of doing things, okay? And so I want to talk about some of those options. Some of them are really easy. And the first one I want to talk about is, of course, the famous Facebook group. It is a really, really popular option. It's just simply to use a Facebook group. Now, there are definitely pros and cons to using Facebook. It is obviously free. It's also very easy. People are used to Facebook. It's got a great mobile app. So if in terms of getting engagement and doing it in a really frictionless way, Facebook's got a lot going for it. It's also got the ability to post videos in there nicely, to have media, to do a Facebook Live right into that group. It's pretty handy, and again, you don't have to pay for it. On the flip side, it's obviously rented land. Not even rented because you're not paying for it, but it basically means you don't own it, you don't own the content. They could take it away from you at any given point. They can change the rules. They could change anything they want. It's not your community. You can act like it is, but it's not. It's on Facebook.com, and that's just the way that it is. So, of course, you've seen Facebook groups before. This is one of the many that I'm involved in. And this isn't really for a membership per se. This is for WP Fusion, and he uses this to help support the community of people who are using WP Fusion. But it's just, if you were to start a Facebook group, this is what it's going to look like. It's easy. Everybody's used to this. I mean, everybody's used to using a Facebook group. They used to have ads in there. They kind of don't really have that anymore, which is nice. The big thing with Facebook is that it's obviously built to be distracting. It's built to keep people stuck to Facebook.com. And so when people come to Facebook, they've got the news feed. They're going to have their notifications popping up. The news feed, by the way, it may or may not show your group very often to people. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind with Facebook groups, is that just because people are posting in your community doesn't mean members are actually going to see it, okay? Because depending on the algorithm that works in the news feed, it may surface that stuff for them, or that it may not. You don't really know. It really depends a lot on what your member is doing on Facebook, okay? And so there's still a community management function that would go into it if you really want to get engagement going. And that's just kind of the way that works. So Facebook is definitely a valid way to do it, but again, it's not digitally sovereign. You don't own it. That's kind of a big deal. But the other thing is that it is simple. And so I do think, despite some of the things that I've said in the past, that Facebook is definitely a valid option if you want to have community. But I think it's really important to say that if you're positioning your community as one of the major core parts of your offer, I would not use Facebook. And that's simply because, well, things happen. They could take this, they could remove your group. They could think that, oh, there's too many offensive things happening in there, so we're going to swipe your group away. They could delete your profile for what, you don't know. So for that reason, it's one of those things to where if you're going to do it, it should be as a bonus. It should be like a little value add type of thing. And if that group were to suddenly disappear, which is not likely, but not impossible, it's not going to make or break your membership site. Okay. With that in mind, for simplicity's sake, for not having to engineer a bunch of stuff, there are definitely some good points to using Facebook groups for your community. Now, some other options here are a couple of hosted options. One of them is called Mighty Networks. The other one is Circle. Okay, you perhaps have heard of these. Now, both of them are fully hosted, all-in-one community platforms. And it's not just for communities, because they also do online courses. You can manage all your members. You can sell memberships. It's basically everything in one platform, and they host the whole thing, and they do a really good job with this actually. I mean, it's a very compelling way to do it. The big thing is that it's fairly expensive, most of them. You can see that you can get community only here at paid annually at $33 a month, and then it pops up to $99. If you were to go over to Circle, the pricing is pretty similar actually, and they get all these different features. So you are using a hosted piece of software. And like any hosting, if you stopped paying your hosting bill, your site goes away. Okay. And it's also, whatever you build in a platform like this, it's not going to be very portable. It's just not. And so this is one of those things where, again, you need to go into it with your eyes wide open, because it might be really hard to switch platforms down the road if you get really, really ingrained into it. And the other thing is that because of the pricing, I really would only say to check out these options if you're coming into this with an established brand, an established audience, and you could get these things going really, really quick with a new offer and a new membership. Otherwise, I think that this pricing is a little bit prohibitive to people that are at the earlier phases of their business. The next option is BuddyBoss. Now, I've talked about BuddyBoss before, and I am a fan of BuddyBoss, and I used to use BuddyBoss quite a bit, actually, and I still am engaged with BuddyBoss on behalf of some of my clients. So it's a good platform. It's all inside of WordPress, and it pretty much has all the functionality of something like Mighty Networks or Circle. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it. You could practically create your own Facebook, but you could do it all inside of WordPress. But along with the power of having online courses with the social stuff that goes with those courses and all that. One of the great things about BuddyBoss, though, is the fact that being that it's inside of WordPress, you've got a lot of flexibility. You're not stuck with the way that it does things because, WordPress is inherently very customizable. Secondly, it's going to integrate with a lot of other things that you have going on with regard to your online course system of choice. You can use whatever mechanism you want for content protection. You can use whatever shopping cart you want. WooCommerce works really nicely with it. And so you've got a lot of flexibility there, whereas some of these other platforms are going to basically it's their way or the highway essentially, and they might give you a few little settings that you can do. The other thing is that BuddyBoss is pretty cost effective for what it does. It really is, and that's because you're the one hosting it. With these other ones, they're hosting it. They got the whole database and everything. With BuddyBoss, you're hosting it. Now that is something that you'll need to consider because BuddyBoss can definitely have higher hosting requirements than your standard blog. If you try to put a good, busy BuddyBoss site onto typical shared hosting, you're probably going to have a pretty hard time with that. And so you will probably need to get beefier hosting. But it really depends on how many concurrent users you're going to have logged into your site at the same time. And also, I've noticed that BuddyBoss, even when there's not very many people using it at the same time, it does kind of slow down the site a little bit just because there's so much code there. There's so much functionality there, and it just it is that way, okay? And so it's one of those things where sometimes you need to throw a little bit more power at it. And then there's the last option, which is mainly if you just want to go with forums and you don't need groups and a member directory and all this kind of stuff, well, check out something like BuddyPress. BBPress is free. It's a old school plugin actually for forums, and it's also backward compatible with BuddyBoss because BuddyBoss is a software fork off of BBPress and BuddyPress. And so if you were to change your mind on BuddyBoss down the road and you decide to back out, but you want to keep your forum, you just put BBPress on there and it will keep on working. It's going to look a little different, but all your content will still be there and still work. That's a handy little tip, by the way. You're not really stuck with BuddyBoss if you decide that you want to discontinue using it down the road. You can back out of that and just go with BBPress and you won't lose any of your data. But if you want to go with a full-blown forum, it's either SimplePress off the top of my head and a few other forum plugins that work. Other than that, you're kind of getting out of the world of WordPress and you're going with things like vBulletin or IP Board or something like that. And we're not going to talk too much about that because I'm pretty WordPress focused with what I do. But and you might have special hosting requirements needed for those other types of packages. So I'll let you research that stuff on your own, but they are viable options if you elect to go that route. All right, so let's wrap this up and bring this thing full circle. Going in, I want to make sure that you have your eyes wide open with the requirements of building up a community on your membership. It can be a good idea. If you get it to really be built up, it can really be a really great asset for your business. It can definitely increase your retention rate and give you a lot of good user-generated content, and there's a lot going for it. That being said, I find that I think everybody else finds that it's a heck of a lot more work than you probably think when you're going in. And I don't want you to just go like a fly into the light saying, I must have a community. You don't necessarily need to have a community built into your membership site. There are plenty of ways to have a very valuable and sticky membership site without having to build groups and forums and all that into it. It really depends on how you position your offer for your members and what kind of membership site you're building. Generally speaking, I like simplicity. I like simplicity to the point where I decided to get rid of the community that I had even after I had one. I just decided it wasn't worth my time anymore and I didn't want to deal with it. And I'm not one that just keeps on doing things out of habit. I used to be. Now I'm like, this is not something I want to do anymore, and I pull the plug. And it is what it is. It's my business, and it has to fit my lifestyle, right? And that's the decision that you got to make for your own as well, okay? If you want some strategy on that, maybe book a strategy call with me. I can listen to your situation, share my experience, and I can give you the best advice, okay? That being said, if you do elect to move forward with a community of some kind, my options in this order would probably be look at a Facebook group. That's only if your user-generated content is not a core component of what they're paying for. If you're positioning that community as a big part of what they're paying for, I do not recommend that you put it on Facebook. Other than that, it is convenient. It's got something going for it in terms of engagement and ease of use for you, so it's definitely something to consider. Secondly, I would look at BuddyBoss. BuddyBoss, it is the best option that I'm aware of that you can self-host inside of WordPress. I'm a big fan of it. I've got a pretty good amount of experience with it as well. And so if you need some help with BuddyBoss, definitely get in touch and I can help you either build the thing up from scratch or just kind of help you get things set up for you, whatever your needs may be. Lastly, if you want something just simple, you don't need the groups, you don't need the member profiles and all that, and you just want a forum where people can ask some questions, check out BBPress. It's free. There's a lot of add-ons for it. You'll have to play around a little bit with the styling to make it look right. But at the end of the day, it's a good, simple, usable forum. It'll integrate right in with the user profiles in your membership site. So there's not going to be a lot of geekery that you're going to need to deal with. And it is pretty simple. Okay. And again, if you want some help styling up your BBPress to make it look okay, hit me up. I can help you out with that. I've done it a few times. That being said, on any of this, if you've got any questions at all, just go below, shoot me an email and ask away and I'll get back to you. I'm kind of an open book on this stuff. All right. I will talk to you later on.